Todd Dunn here aboard my 1936 wooden powerboat Tortuga on July 1st, 2019. Over the weekend, I started work on making up some of the new wood to go onto the boat. And what I've done is I've laminated up a piece of wood that I'm going to scarf into the end of the shear clamp on the outboard side of the boat that the deck beam that I cut out on Saturday sits on. And I also finished making up the deck beam, I hope. I'm going to go below and test fit both of those pieces of wood now. And once we check the fit of those two pieces of wood, I'm going to head over to the lumber yard where I'm going to buy the rest of the wood I need to finish this repair. And basically what I need to buy is wood to replace the 2-inch thick aft bulkhead in the cabin that I ripped out. And to do that, since there is no 2-inch thick Douglas fir available around here, I'm going to buy some 1-inch Douglas fir and I'm going to laminate up a piece of wood over the next day or two to fit into that spot. And depending on how long it takes me at the lumber yard, I will probably come back here for a little bit later this afternoon to work on finishing up the tear out, so that hopefully I will have all of the wood torn out today or tomorrow, so that we can start putting new wood back in. Okay, let's go below and take a look at the wood that I've made up to replace that stringer shear clamp end, and also to replace the piece of the deck beam that I cut out. Okay, here's the wood, the new wood that's going to go in. This is a replacement for the stringer. I laminated two pieces of wood together to get the thickness I needed and cut it to width. There, it fits up there. And it only has to go back about 2 or 3 inches past where my finger is. So I'm going to laminate it in up here. I'll cut a scarf into this plank, take out this bolt here, and remove the end of this shear clamp and scarf that in. I'm not going to do that right now because I have to get a couple of new cutting blades for my oscillating tool. And here's the deck beam that I made up. Again, this is two pieces of 1-inch thick Douglas fir epoxied together and then cut to the 1 7/8 inch thickness. I planed the curve into the top of it here and then cut the matching curve in the bottom to make it 2 1/8 inches high. And that goes up here, and I can see I still need to do a little bit of work on the curve on the end. Let's see if it goes in better the other way. Yeah, I got a little work to do on the curvature on the end there to make that fit. I just take a little bit off the bottom so it'll fit in there, and then it will fit up there like that. And I will be scarfing that into the remains of the deck beam back here. So I'm going to mark that to take just a little bit off the bottom edge. Actually, I may wait until I get the new stringer end scarfed in so that I can make sure it fits properly. But basically the issue is that this slopes down and it's got to sit on top of the stringer. It's hitting at an angle, so I need to take a little bit off the outboard end to make it sit down onto that stringer properly. And so that's where we are right now. Got to get some new blades for my oscillating saw, get some wood to replace this bulkhead that's cut out here, and I got to take the rest of these ceiling pieces out here so that I can get to the outboard edge of that. And that shouldn't be too hard. Basically I just have to remove that from here down and then cut this off and put a scarf into it. And remove some out. I have to sand some paint off here because this is the inside of the mahogany planking that makes up the upper cabin house, and it's screwed in to this wood right along here. I can see where there's, I think there's a screw there, and I did a pretty good job of bunging them so they're really hard to find, but I'll find them and back those screws out so that we can get this last little bit of bad wood out here, and I'm going to have to cut through a bolt here to get that out. So again, I need a new metal cutting blade for my oscillating saw. So that's where I am right now, and I'm going to head into the lumber yard and pick up some wood so that we can get going on the rest of this project. And when I get back, I'll start doing some cutting, and we will start getting the rest of this bad wood out so that we can put things back together and hopefully get rid of the leaks. Well, it's Tuesday, July 2nd, 2019 now. Yesterday, I kind of forgot that we're coming up on the 4th of July and the tourists are here in force. And it took me the entire afternoon to go into town, run a few chores, and pick up the lumber I need to finish this little project. So I didn't get back to the boat except to make sure everything was ready for possible weather last night, which didn't happen. However, there's a big thundercloud just off to the northwest right now that looks like it's headed our way. We may have a thunderstorm here in the next couple of hours. But anyway, I'm back and I'm going to start working on finishing this tear out. I've got several things I'm going to do. First off, I'm going to take these ceiling pieces here out so that I can get at the outside edge of this bad wood, and we'll remove that. Then I'm going to sand here to expose the fasteners that go into this bad wood and back them out so I can get this out. I'll cut through the bolt here so I can get that last little bit out, and then we will be pretty much ready to start doing things to be ready to put things back together. I'm also going to cut the bad wood at the end of the stringer off and scarf in a new piece which I have with me, and then we'll be ready to go. So hopefully by the time I leave today I'll have the new stringer end scarfed in. I'm also going to work on finishing opening up the overhead so that I'm ready to put the new wood in. So hopefully after today I'll be ready to start actually repairing this, not just tearing it apart. Okay, well, let's get to work. Now, as I said, the first step is to take these pieces of ceiling out. I apologize if I block the view of what I'm doing, but it's a pretty tight spot. Nope, gotta take the fire extinguisher off to get at this screw. most of that came out pretty well. Now I'll sand here so I can back the screws I know are in there out. Alright, I'm going to have to stand. So those screws are out, so this should come off now. I believe, if I recall from 5 years ago when I did this, that there is some 4200 holding the two pieces of wood together. But since this is kind of rotted, shouldn't be too difficult to break that away. It's a little tricky. I'm going to get a different tool out. Well, turns out there's a solid piece of wood back here that doesn't need to come out. So I'm going to put all these screws back in while I'm thinking about it. That one, I probably should have replaced that. Okay. It's warm down here. Warm and muggy. Well, as I tear this out, I can see that I've got some punky wood up here that's going to need to be replaced. And I've got some fasteners I'm going to have to pull out up here, some of which will be easy, some not so much. So we'll get them out as I can. These, I believe, are fasteners that were... And what else have I got in there? Looks like that's everything. Have to still get this piece here, which is really solid for no real reason. So I'm going to cut this out. It shouldn't take too long with the cutter. Okay, that had been filled with thickened epoxy at some point. Now we have to get the remains of this stringer out. I have to decide where exactly I'm going to cut it and how far forward does it go. Not very far. The stringer had been notched to accept that piece of 2-inch thick wood that was in there. So I've got some wood down here that still needs to come out. And I think, I've got the sort of inner hull there. Part of this is puzzling out exactly how the boat is built. There's a sound piece of wood out here. This is the exterior of the hull. Another fastener. This is really punky. I'm pretty sure the leak is up here. There's a... Okay. Still got to get this out. And that, I tried to pull it the other day and it did not want to come. So I think I'm going to cut it off. Okay, so we're getting there. So I'm getting it out now, and you can see the pile of junk I've removed down there. And at this point, it's just a matter of going in there and doing a whole bunch of cleanup. So I think that I'll stop filming, and I'll come back when I have it done. Well, I'm getting there. Most of the bad wood is out, and I started cutting the scarf in here for putting the new end to the stringer in. I cut the scarf there, but I still have a little bit to go to bring this end down a little, but I'm out of battery. My oscillating saw has completely sucked 2 batteries dry, so I'm going to go charge the batteries up, and I have about an 1/8 of an inch to take off right up here. And once that's off, I can glue that scarf up, and I definitely want to get that done today so that I can start putting other wood in. And I think what I'm going to do, I discovered I need to replace some wood down here. I'll cut that out, but I'm going to wait until I don't have thunder showers in the forecast, because there's a chance that I'm going to open up the deck here. This is the old deck. It's Alaskan yellow cedar, and I'll have to cut through to the bottom of the plywood I epoxied down without cutting through that, and then put some new wood down here. I have to cut it out and get a new piece of wood to go down there. And I've got up here, probably will need to put a little more wood up here. I've got a little more cutting to do. I think I'm going to have to open up the deck up here and rebuild about the last 6 inches or so of the deck in order to get that completely sealed up. So that's where I am right now. Of course, I've taken more wood out and discovered that I need to take more out. But we're getting close. And by the time I quit today, after I charge my batteries, I will have that stringer glued up so that we can move on to the next step. I should say that this is a 2-inch thick piece of wood. Strictly speaking, a scarf joint like that should be a 7:1, which would take 14 inches long. But since all it has to support is this much wood, and doesn't really have any significant loads on it, I'm not going to do that. I just cut about a 3.5 inch long scarf here, and that's all I'm going to go with for this right now. I will put about 4 screws through this to reinforce that scarf once I get it glued up. So anyway, I'm going to head off home, recharge my batteries, maybe have a snack, and then come back to get going to finish up this part of this project. It is turning into a little bit bigger project than I thought when I got started. But that's the way of wooden boats. Okay, I'm back after the thunderstorm and did a little trimming on my pieces of wood that I'm going to scarf together, and they're ready to go. I've pre-drilled some holes with countersinks where the screws that are going to back the scarf joint up will go, and I'm ready at this point to glue it up. The procedure is pretty simple. I am going to coat both surfaces with unthickened West System epoxy. Just rub some on here. I'm using a high-tech digital spreader. We'll just put that on. I've spent quite a bit of time on these scarf joints to make sure that they match, and they're pretty good. So that goes on like that. I'll take this one and put a little epoxy on here. The purpose of this little bit of epoxy is to keep the joint from becoming glue starved. This epoxy will gradually soak into the wood, but having a little extra on there will keep it from going. So now what I'm going to do now is add some 403 microfibers to this epoxy to thicken it up. Put some of that on the glue joint and glue it up. I've got clamps and I'm also going to screw it. Okay, I've got the epoxy ready to go, and we will put some up here. I'm going to put quite a bit just so that I have plenty, because a lot of this will squeeze out. But I want to make sure I fill any imperfections in my scarf joints, which I cut with my oscillating saw and then sanded them smooth with 60 grit paper. So they're not super smooth, but they're uniform, I guess. I sanded them uniform. Okay, that's ready to go. So the next step is to start gluing. So here we go. Take this. I'm going to put a screw in here as an alignment point. And I'll get a screwdriver out to tighten it up a little. Okay, there we go. Okay, that screw has just penetrated the wood, so it'll line up with the hole I made. And we'll set it in here and get it lined up so that everything is good. And as this sets, I'll take that excess off. Okay, so now you notice this glue is coming out of there quite a bit. I don't want it to spill, so and we'll line it up. I'm going to come down here a little. Should be pretty good there. So I'm just going to see if that lines up properly. Okay, and that's in. Good and solid. And we'll clean off the squeeze out here. Quite a bit up on top. And I will now put another screw in here to hold it. Alright. Wipe that off. And a couple screws in here for alignment and also to strengthen it a little bit. Okay. Let's clean up. I think I'm going to thicken this epoxy a little bit more. Well, maybe not. I'll just use it as a putty here to make sure that's full. Like that. And after this epoxy sets, I can sand that flush. And because I have no intention, since I epoxied that together, of taking this apart, and I don't have any bungs, I'm going to just fill these holes with epoxy, which may not be the wisest thing I've ever done, but it will do the job. And tomorrow I can sand all this flush. And we'll start putting some more paint on there. So that's that. That is scarfed in with the screws to back up the scarf joint, make it nice and strong. And that's basically, tomorrow that will be one piece of wood. And that's where my deck beam is going to land. So the next step, or put this bulkhead piece in here. Now I think I'm going to have to take out this piece of wood up here. That piece of wood goes all the way out to the outside of the boat. So what I think I'm going to do is, after I clear out the remaining wood up here, I will, and have a couple of sunny days, I'll open that up from the outside, put new wood in, and seal it all up, and probably bond the joint there with thickened epoxy, and rebuild the aft. This is the aft edge of the top deck, and I'll rebuild that aft edge of the deck, and hopefully after that's done I won't have a leak anymore. It looks like the leak is out here at the edge. So we'll get all that done, and hopefully at that point we will no longer have a leak. So, but that is a real milestone. It's the first piece of new wood back into the boat after tearing out 2 huge bags of rotted wood. So what's the next step? Well, I'm probably going to have to replace this plank up here, but that is the plank that makes up the aft edge of the deck here. It ends about 1 inch back past that plank. And I think what I'm going to do is I am going to rebuild the interior overhead as the next step. Then I'll put this bulkhead back in. I've got the wood for it. And once the bulkhead is in, I will put the deck beam back in. And then when we've got a run of good weather, I'm going to go up on deck and open up the aft end of the deck and rebuild it with all new wood, and also remove that piece of wood from the outside and put a new piece in and seal it all the way around. That won't take long to do, but I want to make sure that I have plenty of time for all of my sealants to cure before we have a thunderstorm like we had here a couple of hours ago. So from here on out, you're going to be watching me starting to put things back together. And the first thing, that'll be after I finish taking this wood out. I didn't finish it earlier simply because I ran out of battery for my saws and I couldn't cut it out anymore. So I will finish taking that wood out so that we can put new wood in, and at that point we'll be ready to put the rest of this repair back together. And once this epoxy cures tomorrow, I'll come in and sand it all out, and we'll start painting that. I'll sand it to blend in the edges, and we'll start painting that wood to make it look like it was never repaired. Okay, thanks for watching this video that was stretched over 2 days. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and to click that notification bell. Thanks again for watching.